He walked into the hospital expecting a routine visit until he saw a little girl clinging to her dying sister's hand, begging not to be separated. In that moment, billionaire Logan Whitaker's entire life changed. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel as a sign of support. Your engagement helps keep powerful stories like this alive. Logan Whitaker, a self-made millionaire from Seattle, hadn't visited Mercy Hill Medical Center in over 2 years. It wasn't because he didn't care. He had donated millions to renovate the aging hospital wing, but because being there reminded him of what he lost. His wife, Cynthia, had died in that very building after a lengthy battle with lymphoma. Mercy Hill carried too many ghosts. Now Logan walked through the newly polished halls he helped fund, his Italian shoes echoing on spotless tile. The hospital bore little resemblance to what it had been when he first stepped in as a nervous husband clutching a bouquet. Bright murals covered the pediatric walls. The ICU had state-of-the-art monitors, and the cancer ward bore Cynthia's name. The Cynthia Whitaker Oncology Center shined in engraved steel as a tribute to her battle and grace. Logan's visit today wasn't personal. It was strictly business. He planned to meet with the board and check on his foundation's latest grant. The last thing he expected was for this visit to pull him into someone else's heartbreak. As he passed the pediatric wing, a nurse rushed by, her expression frantic. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely, barely slowing. Logan stepped aside, curiosity piqued. Moments later, he heard soft crying, 2 distinct voices. He followed the sound around the corner, stopping near room 112. Through the glass, he saw 2 children, identical twin girls, maybe 7 or 8. One sat in a chair by the bed, her thin arms wrapped around a teddy bear. The other lay in the hospital bed, her pale face framed by oxygen tubes and bandages. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. The standing twin looked up and met Logan's eyes. Hers were red from crying, but they held a strange mix of courage and fear. A nurse noticed Logan lingering and approached. "Mr. Whitaker," she said softly, "those are the Bellamy twins. Tragic situation. Their parents died in a house fire just last week. The girl in bed, Abby, suffered major injuries trying to save her sister Amber. She's been in and out of consciousness." Logan blinked, absorbing the words. Orphaned, burned, barely clinging to life. "Are they alone?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The nurse sighed. "No living relatives have come forward. CPS is involved, but right now it's just the 2 of them." Logan stared into the room. He had built this hospital wing for people like Cynthia, for medical progress. But here were these 2 girls, left behind by a cruel twist of fate, and it felt like the building had been waiting for something else entirely. "Can I go in?" he asked the nurse. She nodded, eyes softening. "Of course." As he stepped inside, the standing twin, Amber, straightened. "Are you a doctor?" she asked, her voice small. "No," Logan said quietly. "I'm just someone who wants to help." And as he looked at Abby, barely breathing, unconscious, something inside Logan cracked. He hadn't cried in years, but now, standing in that room, he felt the tears come. Amber's eyes were fixed on Logan as he pulled a chair up beside the bed. Her little hands clutched the frayed teddy bear like it was the only solid thing in her life. Logan saw the dirt still clinging to the bear's fur and the way her knuckles whitened with tension. "You said you're not a doctor," Amber said cautiously. "So, why are you here?" Logan hesitated. What was he doing here? He came for a meeting about budgeting and expansion. Not this, not heartbreak, not trauma. But the moment he locked eyes with her, something inside him changed. "I help this hospital," he said finally. "I make sure it has what it needs to care for kids like your sister." Amber didn't blink. "She's very sick." "I know," Logan said softly. "The nurse told me, but she's strong. I can tell." Amber nodded, and for the first time a flicker of hope crossed her face. "She saved me. When the fire started, Abby pushed me out the window. She went back for Mom and Dad, but," her voice cracked, "she never came back out." Logan felt a pang in his chest. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a silk handkerchief, offering it to her. She took it with trembling hands, wiping her cheeks and nose. "What's going to happen to us?" she asked. "They said we might go to a shelter, but I don't want to leave her." Logan looked at the machines. The rhythmic beep-beep of the heart monitor was a reminder that Abby still had a chance, however small. "You're not going anywhere without her," he said firmly. "Not on my watch." A nurse stepped in to check Abby's vitals. She glanced at Logan with surprise but said nothing. After a few adjustments, she whispered, "We'll do another evaluation in the morning. She's stable, but fragile." Amber didn't look away from her sister. "She's always been stronger than me," she murmured. Logan gently rested a hand on Abby's arm. Her skin was warm but covered in scars and bandages. He remembered Cynthia in her final weeks, how pale she'd become, how every breath seemed like a battle. And yet, even then, she'd never stopped fighting. Something in Abby reminded him of that same spirit. "Amber," he said, "I'm going to make sure you both get what you need. Food, a place to sleep, and the best care this hospital can give your sister." The little girl looked up. "Why?" He paused. "Because once, someone I loved got sick too. And I know how it feels when the world doesn't seem fair." Amber tilted her head. "Did she get better?" Logan's throat tightened. "Number, but she taught me something. That love doesn't stop when someone's gone. It keeps moving, looking for where it's needed next." Amber didn't respond. She simply reached out and touched his hand. That one gesture sealed something between them, unspoken but real. And in that hospital room, Logan made a promise to himself and to two little girls who had no one else left. He wouldn't walk away, not this time. Logan didn't go home that night. He canceled the board meeting, called his assistant, and told her to push back his schedule indefinitely. Then he spent the rest of the evening in Abby's hospital room, seated beside Amber, who eventually curled up on the small couch and fell asleep with the teddy bear tucked under her chin. Nurses came and went quietly, surprised to see the hospital's most high-profile donor still there, hours after visiting hours had ended. But no one questioned him. Logan Whitaker wasn't just a name on the plaque. He was the reason their oncology wing even existed. If he wanted to stay, they let him. As the night deepened, Logan sat in silence, watching the machines keep Abby alive. The faint hum of the IV pump and the rhythmic beeping of her monitor had a strange calming effect, but it also triggered a cascade of memories. He remembered holding Cynthia's hand during her chemo treatments, how she always smiled even when she was in pain, how she once whispered, "If I don't make it, promise me you'll keep helping people." That's the only thing that matters. Back then, Logan had thrown himself into work. Making money was easy. Giving it away to worthy causes, that's what he thought would fulfill her wish. But now, with Amber sleeping beside him and Abby clinging to life, he finally understood what Cynthia meant. It wasn't just about donations. It was about being present when it mattered most. The next morning, a doctor entered the room with a clipboard and a cautious expression. "Mr. Whitaker, may I have a word?" Logan stood and stepped into the hallway. "How is she?" "She's holding on," the doctor said, "but her condition is critical. The burns on her back and legs are healing, but the smoke damage to her lungs is severe. We've put her on a steroid regimen, and she's responding better than expected, but she'll need a long recovery, possibly months." Logan nodded. "And what about her sister? Where is Child Protective Services in all this?" The doctor hesitated. "CPS plans to move Amber to a temporary group home later this week. They're struggling to find a placement that can accommodate both children given Abby's medical needs." Logan's jaw tightened. "You're saying they'll be separated?" "It's likely unless a guardian steps forward to take both girls." A guardian. The word echoed like a drumbeat in Logan's chest. He didn't say anything at first, he just stared at the closed door to Abby's room. Behind it, a little girl was fighting for her life, and another was sleeping alone in a hospital chair, afraid of losing everything she had left. "I want to talk to CPS," Logan said firmly. The doctor raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking of—" "I'm not just thinking," Logan said. "Get me the paperwork. I want to be their emergency guardian, starting today." There was no grand plan, no strategy, just a man whose heart had cracked wide open. For the first time in years, Logan wasn't running from pain. He was running towards something. By noon, the hospital's social services department had connected Logan with CPS. The meeting happened in a cramped administrative room with mismatched chairs and a flickering overhead light. The caseworker, a young woman named Teresa Morales, looked at Logan with polite skepticism as she spread out the Bellamy file across the table. "Mr. Whitaker," she began carefully, "you're certainly within your rights to request emergency guardianship, but given the girl's trauma, we normally look for placements with trained foster parents or relatives. People experienced in this kind of situation." Logan folded his hands, his voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Teresa, these girls have been through hell. I'm not going to let them be separated or tossed into a system that wasn't prepared for them. I may not be a trained foster parent, but I have the means to provide stability and care, and I have the heart to do it." She studied him for a moment, clearly weighing the pros and cons. "You don't have any children of your own?" Logan shook his head. My wife and I were planning to, but life had other plans." There was a beat of silence before Teresa glanced back at the file. "Your background check came back clean. You own multiple properties and have a philanthropic track record. I can authorize temporary guardianship for 7 days, during which a formal assessment will be made." "I understand," Logan said, "but I want them with me today, both of them." Teresa nodded, flipping open a form. "You'll need to sign this and be ready for a home inspection within 48 hours. Are you prepared for that?" "I'll have a room ready before the hour's up." He wasn't exaggerating. As soon as the paperwork was signed, Logan stepped into the hallway and called his estate manager. "I need 2 adjoining bedrooms prepped immediately," he said. "One needs to be child-friendly with toys, a nightlight, make it feel safe. The other needs a hospital bed, oxygen unit, and quiet. Have a nurse on call." "Yes, sir," came the efficient reply. An hour later, Logan returned to Abby's room, where Amber was rubbing her eyes and holding her sister's hand. "Hey," Logan said softly, "I have something to tell you." Amber looked up, unsure. "I talked to the people who were going to move you," he explained. "They agreed to let you and Abby come stay with me. Just for a little while, until everything gets sorted." Amber's eyes widened. "With you?" He nodded. "I have a big house, lots of space. A nurse will be there to help Abby, and you'll be right there beside her." Her face crumpled and she burst into tears, not the frightened kind, but the kind that came from pure relief. "I didn't want to leave her," she whispered. "You won't," Logan promised. "Not ever again." As the medical transport team wheeled Abby's bed toward the elevator, Amber clutched Logan's hand the whole way. She didn't say much, but she didn't let go. And as the elevator doors closed behind them, Logan felt something he hadn't in years: hope. The ride to Logan's estate was quiet but emotionally charged. Amber sat in the back of the medical transport van, gripping the rail of Abby's bed, while the nurse rode beside them, adjusting her IV and checking her vitals every few minutes. Logan followed closely behind in his SUV, watching through the windshield with a growing sense of responsibility and something deeper he couldn't quite name. His estate, nestled in a private wooded area outside of Seattle, had once felt like a mausoleum. After Cynthia's passing, the vast halls and empty rooms became reminders of what he'd lost. But as he opened the front door that afternoon and watched Amber step inside, wide-eyed and tentative, the space felt alive again. Amber's small sneakers tapped lightly against the hardwood floors as she explored the foyer. "This place is like a hotel," she whispered to herself. Logan smiled. "It's just a house, but it's yours now too." The team wheeled Abby's bed into a specially prepared room on the first floor, once Logan's home office, now transformed into a soft, serene space. The oxygen unit hummed quietly, and floral curtains framed the window where light poured in. A pediatric nurse, Ellie, helped settle Abby in, checking her vitals while the medical equipment clicked into place. Amber stood in the doorway, looking unsure. "Can I sleep in here too?" she asked. Logan crouched beside her. "You have your own room right next door, but if you want to sleep in here, I'll have a little cot brought in. You won't be far." Amber nodded slowly. "Okay." Within the hour, a small cot with pastel sheets and a ladybug blanket was placed beside Abby's bed. Logan stood in the hall as movers carried in boxes of toys, books and pajamas he'd had rushed in from a local store. He didn't know what kind of things 7-year-old girls liked, but he bought everything that looked remotely comforting. Coloring books, stuffed animals, puzzles, a tiny pink nightlight shaped like a unicorn. Amber watched them bring in the toys, her face slowly brightening. "You got all this for us?" "Of course," Logan said. "Every kid needs a unicorn nightlight." She smiled shyly, the first genuine smile he'd seen since meeting her. Dinner that night was chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, and apple slices. The kind of comfort food Logan hadn't eaten in decades. He sat with Amber at the breakfast nook, watching her eat with cautious excitement. "You ever had fancy food?" she asked between bites. "Once or twice," Logan chuckled. "I bet rich people eat tiny stuff on big plates." He laughed out loud. "You're not wrong." Later, Amber brushed her teeth in the hall bathroom and crawled into the cot beside Abby's bed. Logan stood at the doorway, watching her settle in. "Good night, Amber," he said. "Good night, Mr. Logan." He turned to leave, but she added, "Thank you for saving us." He paused, heart tight in his chest. "You saved each other," he replied softly. "I'm just helping." And for the first time in years, Logan didn't dread the silence that filled the house. It was no longer empty. It was full, with purpose. The first week at Logan's estate brought glimmers of hope. Amber adjusted quickly to her new surroundings. Her days were filled with gentle routines, drawing at the kitchen counter, helping the housekeeper fold towels, and whispering stories to Abby as she lay silently in bed. She never left her sister's side for long. Logan, meanwhile, rearranged his life completely. Meetings were held virtually from his study, and the estate staff transformed into a makeshift support team. A second nurse was hired. Meals were tailored for kids. For once, Logan's money wasn't just building wings or writing grants, it was changing lives right inside his home. Then, without warning, everything shifted. It started late one evening when Amber came rushing into the den, her face pale. "Mr. Logan, Abby's beeping a lot." Logan bolted up. He didn't ask questions, just ran. When he entered Abby's room, alarms were sounding on the monitor. The nurse, Ellie, was already there, checking her oxygen levels and vitals. Abby's breathing had grown ragged, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Her skin had taken on a faint bluish hue. "She's going into respiratory distress," Ellie said urgently. "Call an ambulance." Logan didn't hesitate. As paramedics rushed into the estate minutes later, Logan held Amber close, shielding her eyes from the chaos. She sobbed into his chest as they loaded Abby into the back of the ambulance. "Can I go with her?" Amber pleaded. Logan looked at the EMT, who nodded. Amber climbed in, and Logan followed behind in his car, his hands clenched tight on the wheel. His mind was a storm. He'd promised her safety, promised he wouldn't let them be separated. And now it felt like that promise was slipping through his fingers. At the hospital, Abby was rushed into intensive care. Doctors surrounded her, speaking in medical shorthand that Logan couldn't follow. He stood in the waiting area, Amber curled up beside him on a bench, her face buried in his coat. Hours passed before a doctor finally approached. "She's stable for now," the woman said, "but her lungs are weaker than we realized. The inflammation's worse. We're placing her in a medically induced coma to help her body rest." Logan closed his eyes. "Will she wake up?" "We don't know yet, but she's young. She's strong." Amber didn't say a word. She simply squeezed Logan's hand tighter. Later that night, Logan sat beside Abby's bed in the ICU, staring at her through the glass. Her body looked so small, dwarfed by machines and tubes. It was haunting, familiar. He hadn't been able to save Cynthia, but maybe, just maybe, he'd been given a second chance. Back in the waiting area, Logan made a call. "Get the top pulmonologist in the region," he told his assistant. "I don't care what it costs. Bring them here, tonight." And as he hung up, he turned to Amber, who looked up at him with weary eyes. "Is she going to be okay?" she whispered. Logan knelt beside her. "She has to be," he said, "because we're not done being a family yet." 3 days passed. Abby remained in a coma, her fragile body resting, while machines did the work her lungs couldn't. Logan stayed at the hospital the entire time. He didn't return to his estate. He didn't take meetings or calls. He barely slept. Amber, despite being only 7, handled the situation with surprising quiet strength. She stayed curled up on the bench beside her sister's room or colored pictures for Abby, taping them on the window. Logan made sure she ate, rested, and was never alone. But each night when the halls grew quiet and the fluorescent lights dimmed, Logan would stand beside Abby's bed, gently holding her hand, whispering, "You have to come back. She needs you. I need you." On the 4th day, the specialist Logan had flown in, a pulmonologist from Stanford, adjusted Abby's treatment plan. The new meds reduced the inflammation. Slowly, signs of improvement began to show. Her oxygen levels stabilized. The swelling in her lungs eased. And finally, one still morning just before sunrise, Abby moved her fingers. "Doctor!" the nurse shouted. Logan and Amber were both asleep in the waiting area when a nurse shook them awake. "She's responding! Come quickly!" They rushed in to find Abby blinking slowly, eyes groggy but open. Her breathing was shallow but unassisted. Amber gasped and rushed to her bedside. "Abby, you're awake!" Abby's lips moved, cracked and dry. She barely whispered, "Hi." Amber sobbed uncontrollably, throwing her arms around her sister. Logan stood frozen, heart thudding. He felt the overwhelming flood of relief wash over him, so powerful it nearly knocked him to his knees. Later, as Abby rested, Logan sat between the two girls. Amber was curled beside her sister on the bed, holding her hand as if afraid to let go again. "She's going to be okay," Logan said softly, barely believing it himself. Amber looked up at him. "Does that mean we can stay? With you?" He smiled, brushing hair from her face. "I already talked to the judge. I'm filing for permanent guardianship." Amber blinked, processing. "So, you're going to be like our dad?" "If you'll let me," he said gently. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled. "Okay." 3 months later, Abby had healed enough to leave the hospital. She walked out of the ICU on her own 2 feet, slower than most kids, but strong. Back at the estate, her room had been redesigned just for her, filled with flowers, art supplies, and sunshine. On a warm spring afternoon, the 3 of them, Logan, Amber, and Abby, sat on a picnic blanket in the backyard, laughing as Abby tried to beat Amber at a board game. "You cheated," Amber accused playfully. "I'm recovering," Abby grinned. "I get extra turns." Logan laughed, stretched out beside them, watching the girls finally be kids. He had lost so much, but in his darkest moment, he found something unexpected. A second chance. Not to fix the past, but to build a future. Together. Logan Whitaker thought his life of wealth and charity was enough, until he met 2 desperate sisters whose strength and love reignited his own purpose. Through pain, hope, and healing, Logan discovered that true family isn't always born, it's built. And sometimes saving someone else saves you too. Moved by this story? Share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of love to heal. And remember, sometimes the greatest difference you can make is simply showing up.